I'd like to call to order the April 7th, 2025 Committee of the Whole Regular Board Meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. All those who are able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks very much. Welcome to everyone joining us in person this evening and those viewing remotely from home. The board held an executive session prior to this meeting regarding legal, real estate, and student discipline. Board members with an agenda before you, are there any changes? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to now ask the board secretary to conduct a roll call of board members.
Dr. Bader?
Here.
Dr. Anderson?
Here.
Dr. Buck?
Here.
Dr. Crevecoeur?
Here.
Dr. Demo?
Here.
Dr.
Here.
Okay. Thank you very much. Prior to the board, to our meeting this evening, the board recognized 3 outstanding student athletes who recently won state championships. Jesse Myers won gold in the 200 meters with a new state meet record time of 21.08 seconds at the indoor track and field state championship. Additionally, state high swimmers Molly Workman and Sam Huggins took home gold medals at the PIAA Swimming and Diving Championships. Workman stamped a new PIAA record in the 100 freestyle to claim the Class 3A state crown. She etched a new state high record as well in the 50 freestyle to also claim gold. Huggins became state high's fastest swimmer ever in the 200 freestyle by setting a school record and earning a state championship as well. At a later time, Asher Cunningham will also be recognized for winning the 172-pound PIAA Class 3 Individual Wrestling Championship. Congratulations to these 4 state high student athletes for these exceptional performances, and kudos to your teammates, families, and coaches as well. And actually, I have some other brief communications tonight, if you'll indulge me this evening. This month of April marks National Autism Acceptance Month, and this is a time to celebrate neurodiversity and promote understanding and inclusion for individuals on the autism spectrum. This month is also National Poetry Month, and so if you'll allow me, I'd like to share a really short poem by Jacqueline Woodson. You may be familiar with her wonderful TED Talk, which is about being a slow reader and how it has shaped her writing. She has said in today's world she most likely would be considered dyslexic. So this is called Stevie and Me. Every Monday, my mother takes us to the library around the corner. We are allowed to take out 7 books each. On those days, no one complains that all I want are picture books. Those days, no one tells me to read faster, to read harder books, to read like Dell. No one is there to say, not that book, when I stop in front of the small paperback with a brown boy on the cover, Stevie. I read, one day my mama told me, you know you're going to have a little friend come and stay with you. And I said, who is it? If someone had been fussing with me to read like my sister, I might have missed the picture book filled with brown people, more brown people than I'd ever seen in a book before. The little boy's name was Stephen, but his mother kept calling him Stevie. My name is Robert, but my mama don't call me Roberty. If someone had taken that book out of my hand, said, you're too old for this, maybe I had never believed that someone who looked like me could be in the pages of the book. That is, someone who looked like me had a story. And with that, we'll move on to the superintendent report.
Thank you, Amy. I am pleased to announce that our communications department recently received multiple awards from the Pennsylvania School Public Relations Association statewide communications contest. Nabil Mark and Chris Rosenblum brought home 14 awards across several categories, showcasing their dedication to effective communication. Nabil earned 3 first-place awards of excellence in photography, along with additional awards in writing, photography, and video production. Chris received 3 second-place awards of merit in writing, reflecting his exceptional storytelling. Together, they also received honorable mentions for the annual report and website design. These awards highlight the high quality of communication we provide in our community Please join me in congratulating Nabil and Chris for their outstanding work and well-deserved recognitions. They're in the back there. Additionally, congratulations to Morgan Inhofe, our State High agricultural science teacher, for being recognized as the 2025 Pennsylvania Association of Agricultural Educators Northern Region Outstanding Agricultural Education Teacher Award. That's a lot. This award celebrates the dedication of the PAAE members who foster boundless classroom and limitless learning for their students. It also acknowledges their role in shaping the future and honors their contributions to developing the next generation of citizens and agricultural leaders. Recipients are recognized for their program, development, innovation, as well as their commitment to lifelong learning. Congratulations, Morgan. Easterly Parkway Elementary School will hold a spring clothing swap in its all-purpose room on Saturday, April 12th from 10 to 3 p.m. Gently used clothing in sizes infant through adult, as well as clothes, backpacks, and other items will be available for free. Donations can be dropped off after school on Friday, April 11th until 7 p.m., and on Saturday, April 12th from 9 to 10 a.m. All remaining items will be donated to Goodwill. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Student Representative Elijah Carey will provide us with an update on several student initiatives.
Thank you, Dr. Bader. Congratulations to our state champions from Mount Nittany Middle School, the Math Counts team, and the individual winner, Franklin Shu. On March 22nd, the team traveled to Harrisburg to compete in the State Math Counts Championship. This year, 213 schools and 1,936 individual competitors from across Pennsylvania participated in Math Counts, with 24 teams qualifying for the state-level competition. Rising above the field, the Mount Nittany Middle School team, composed of Franklin, Emil Itzkov Kurto, Iksha Singla, and Isabella Song, claimed first place. In the individual competition, Franklin, an 8th grader, took first place to become the 2025 state championship. Even more impressively, Franklin led his team to victory on his birthday, a truly unforgettable celebration. The team, coached by Rebecca Schoberg, who will proudly represent Pennsylvania as the state coach at the National Math Counts competition in Washington, D.C. this May, Franklin will join the 4-person Pennsylvania team for this prestigious event. Congratulations to State High's Ty Salazar for receiving the prestigious Big School Mr. PA Football Award, recognizing the top player in the state across the 4A, 5A, and 6A divisions. The accolade is the latest highlight from a memorable year for Ty, a true student athlete and inspiration whose story is still being written.
Eli. Jackie's not here with us this evening, so Peter's going to share a legislative update for her.
Yep. Hold on just a second. My computer decided that it was going to go to sleep for a moment. I have alternative means. Let's see how this works. There we go. All right. At the PA state level, talk around Harrisburg continues to be focused on the budget. There are many bills and conversations happening around cyber charter reform. In addition, there are some legislators looking carefully at the large fund balances that some charter schools are sitting on and considering various actions to address that. At the federal level, the Supreme Court ruled on Friday that, at least for now, the administration has the right to keep frozen $65 million for teacher training and professional development. Even though Congress has already appropriated the money for the programs, the Education Department could stop funding them while the case is litigated in the lower courts. The Secretary of Education issued a memo on April 3rd requiring state education agencies and local education agencies to certify their compliance with their anti-discrimination obligations laid out in Students for Fair Admissions v. Harvard in order to continue receiving federal financial assistance. In other words, the federal government has threatened to withhold funding for public schools that do not eliminate what they deem to be, I will say, discriminatory DEI programs and practices. Education agencies have been given 10 days to sign and return the certification. There has been no word yet from the Pennsylvania Department of Education regarding this request, though the PA State Board Association has shared that an announcement is forthcoming. The district is working with its solicitor, and others to ensure that we are complying with all laws. Laws are very important in this case. All right, finally, local action. Several local superintendents and board members met with Representative G.T. Thompson's office this afternoon to discuss the Educational Choice for Children Act. This change to the tax code would create a national voucher program that would award scholarships to students who wish to attend private and/or religious schools in lieu of public school. This program would be funded by donations, where the recipients would be given a 100% matching federal tax credit, not a deduction. Donations could also be made up of offloaded stocks to scholarship granting organizations. In this case, the donor would be able to evade paying tax on capital gains while also getting a tax credit for the value of stock and their realized gains. Both of these perks benefit wealthy, sophisticated investors, and funnels more money to private school vouchers. Some might call this elite. Representative Thompson's legislative director was happy to share with us that he is not supportive, I repeat, not supportive of creating a voucher program at the federal level. We urged him to continue working to support public schools in PA and oppose the introduction of ECCA into the tax code. If you have any questions, you can ask Jackie.
Yeah, Jackie's participating in a CIU 10 search this evening, so she's not able to join us. Thank you very much, Peter. Do you have anything you need to share from COG?
I do not.
Okay.
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The
I didn't.
the big news out of COG is the Bergmeyer's contract. That's all they can talk about. So that's it. Yeah.
It's been trash
It's
with
been
them.
all trash. All trash.
All right. So we now have time for public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes for items related to board business that are not a consent or action item this evening. For those items, we ask that public comment be held just prior to voting on that item. Do we have anyone here in person this evening to make a public comment? Yes, would you like to come to the podium? Share your name and where you reside in the district, please, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Jesse Barlow. I live in State College Borough, and I am coming before you to advocate that you do absolutely nothing. And my comment here has to do with what Mr. Buck was talking about. The April 3rd memo from the Department of Education that came from Craig Traynor, the Acting Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights, which I think is a euphemistic way of talking about his title. It was a follow-up to a February 14th Dear Colleague letter that was sent to K through 12 systems throughout the country, universities, and just about everywhere else that they could, about essentially regarding DEI as reverse discrimination, which it is not. And it was based, as Peter said, on the SSFA versus Harvard decision. But the letter actually goes very far beyond that decision. It misinterprets it, and in some cases it contradicts it. As Lillian Garces wrote in the Chronicle of Higher Education, the SSFA decision placed constraints on the means that institutions can use to advance diversity, but it did not place restrictions on the goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion. In other words, this is not the SSFA decision is not an attack on DEI programs or curricula, and this letter should not be interpreted as law, and it should not be obeyed as such or regarded as such. And that's not just my word, that's the word of the General Counsel for the New York State Department of Education, has also made this essentially statement that they are in conformance with state and federal civil rights law. And that's where we should be, in conformance with state and federal civil rights law. This order is ridiculous. It is a preposterous interpretation of civil rights law, and it should be viewed as such. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in person to make a public comment this evening?
Yes, good.
Do we have anyone online? All right. Seeing none, then we'll move on to Facilities and Grounds. We're going to start with Committee of the Whole. We have Facilities and Grounds with Mike Fisher, who's going to provide updates on the Mount Nittany Elementary project as well as Park Forest Middle School.
Good evening. While Mike Fisher gets his presentation loaded up, we'll just let you know that tonight we have some photos for you, and Mike will talk a little bit about the work that's being completed at the Mount Nittany Elementary School building. Because I work here in this building, right next to that building, I can tell you that I hear sounds and feel vibrations each and every day. I know that the students do as well. Hopefully it will get a little bit more, a little bit better for them. But there's lots of progress, lots of earth moving, and so Mike can talk about that.
Good evening. So, as Randy said, there's a lot going on over there. If you look across the fields, put a couple of pictures in here. Right now, it's a lot of earth moving going on throughout basically the entire footprint of the site. Just a couple of pictures, kind of showing some of the start of the basins, and then this is kind of the pad they prepped to drill the geo wells. So really, current progress. First and foremost, we decided to perform the construction management internally on this project. So we have set up a process to do that. We are the daily visits with pictures documented, and then with kind of progress in several different categories: environmental, safety, general site conditions, and so forth. So we'll have all that documentation, and we feel as though it's certainly sufficient for the project. So right now, like I said, there are a lot of earth moving going on. They're on to the kind of like where the building pad is. So they're kind of prepping that for the actual building footprint. I think last meeting we had a change order for unsuitable soils. So that is complete as far as where the building footprint is. Hopefully we don't run into anything where the parking lot might be kind of down the road. So we're going to be optimistic. And then as of, this was last Wednesday, we had 12 wells drilled. So they're moving along at a pace they're comfortable with, that are on track. So that's good. I talked to the actual guys drilling the holes and putting the casing in, and they said, everything's going swimmingly. So that's all good news. And then as well with the earth moving, we're really focused on getting those stormwater basins kind of set in place and getting the elevation set. So kind of next couple weeks, over the next 3 weeks or so, we'll finish that building pad. We're going to start to pour footers. The rain last week kind of held us up a little bit, but we envision to start pouring concrete here in the next week or so. And we'll start getting the stormwater piping in, and the basins, the catch basins. Continue with drilling wells. They brought a third rig on, so they're getting about 3 a day right now, so moving right along. And then there's a large retaining wall as part of the project. We have went ahead and picked the color for that, and they're going to get started on that momentarily. So that's kind of where we are. Questions? Comments?
I don't know anything about geothermal wells. How many wells will they drill? I thought it was just like with the house. I thought it was like one big well.
It's 57, I believe. It's in the 50s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just for the addition section, and we have
Correct.
others for the building already
Correct.
established.
Correct.
I had no
So
idea.
the original design, I think, was around 30 some. We drilled a test well, kind of hit some unsuitable conditions about 180 feet down. So what they did was we're doing more wells that are a little shallower. So
Are the wells supposed to electricity for the entire 50, because 57 is a lot. How did you get to 57? Like,
So
what
it's
made-
it's the load calculations. They know each well. So when we do a test hole, it's at the conductivity of the water, flow rate, that sort of thing. And based on that information, they calculate that we'll need, X amount of wells per, for the building load, right, for the heating and cooling.
So with the 57 well, we'll be able to heat and cool
Correct.
the majority of the school?
All of it.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
for
wow.
the addition.
Okay.
And like I
That's
said,
amazing.
currently the rest of the existing school has its own well field. So it basically maintains a loop through the school, a certain temperature, and then it's heat pumps, water source heat pumps then to take that, provide the heating and cooling in the actual rooms.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I was just going to ask Mike to explain very briefly how a geothermal well system works for folks at home, and you mostly did that at the end, but if you wouldn't mind doing that quickly, because I think that would be really illuminating.
Sure, we're basically using the ground temperature, which is pretty consistent. As you go down under, 10, 15 feet, that temperature remains pretty constant. So we're just utilizing that to basically cool or heat water, which then the heat pumps use to cool and heat the building. At a very high level. I can go into more detail if you'd like, Peter.
No, I
Okay.
think that's great. No, that a geothermal heat pump is a thing that people like just sort of hear about, but it's just as far as many people are concerned, it's a piece of magic, and so I just appreciate the very quick explanation. That's helpful.
The well is basically just like you would drill domestic water for your house. It's basically the same well.
Okay, I did not know. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? All right, you want to move on?
So the next is a update on the Park Forest stormwater discussion that we had a couple weeks ago. I believe that Todd Smith from ELA should be on as well with us virtually. But I'll let Mike talk about it, but we are just following up from that conversation and want to let you know what we believe are our next steps.
Sure. So as presented previously, we feel as though there's really kind of two options out there to be able to manage the stormwater coming off the new site. So again, option one is shown here graphically. So this puts in both options, there is at the top of the page there, you can see there's a small basin. That's part of both options that will be needed. And then the bottom basin, what you see on the screen, is kind of the one in question, right? So option one really is putting it on the same side of the road as the new building. And with that, it's about 2 3/4 acres of trees that will have to be removed to accommodate that basin. And then option two, which we'll show here, is really putting it onto the other side of the road. So we can kind of leave, other than about 0.1 acres for utilities, we kind of leave that forested area along Valley Vista. So option one is about $1 million less expensive, as rough budget numbers at this point. However, we don't have to remove near as many trees. And then option two, putting the basin across the road, will be actually required to put in some subsurface stormwater management systems kind of under the parking lots, as shown in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. But the other benefit of this option is that we will be refurbishing the fields that are across the road that are currently kind of phys ed softball fields that don't get used a lot, only because of it's a little damp. So, with this, we'll be able to actually fit a soccer field in that space. Kind of refurbish the space. It'll be dry enough to play on, and we'll be able to better utilize that ground than we currently are. So, those are really kind of the high level gist of the two options. So,
Just curious, so if we were to go with option 2, I assume the refurbishment of the field would happen before most of the rest of the project? Like stormwater has to happen first, is that correct?
It typically does.
Okay.
I'm not sure that it would be absolutely required until you start actually getting a lot of impervious ground. So the building itself, we would need to have some stormwater facilities in place. But these are, accommodate both the parking lots as well, and the parking lots will be done last. So you wouldn't have to have everything done upfront.
So they
for
would be
example.
able to use, if we were to create a soccer field there, they would be able to use it before the new building is even ready?
Correct. So the other, there's some other nuances there, whether we go with, let's say, a sodded field, which is more expensive, but you can get on it faster versus just kind of planting. So it's basically one season versus 2 seasons, sod versus just planting. So those are things we'll have to work out, and if, we're recommending the basin across the road, and then with that, we will work with the instructional team as far as timing. It's a little early for that, but to try to minimize impact, on the students themselves, to try to, get that field in and not kind of take away that green space from them when they can get on it.
Yeah, Carlene?
In option 1, I guess the reason why you would make a soccer field inside, is it because it's too small? But could it be used for something else? Because the way you're presenting it, it seems like option 2 gives us the basin, but we could also use it for something else. But what about option 1? Do we have that same possibility?
Absolutely. So we could, in option 1, it would be separate from the project or incorporated, I suppose, but at an added cost, we could refurbish that field, and then you could put 2 softball fields in, or a football field, or a track, or, there's more opportunities in option 1. But again, at an added cost of probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $750,000 or $1 million.
Am I correct that the $1 million additional cost to put the basin on the opposite side of the field, that doesn't include it would be an upgraded, an upcharge for a sod field? You're just talking about planting
Correct.
grass?
Correct. Really, the driver of the added cost is the underground stormwater catchments under the parking lots.
Other questions?
I just want to make one comment. Option 2 is less trees disturbed. Doesn't mean that there's no trees disturbed. There's going to be, I think it's important that everyone understands there's going to be trees disturbed. The other thing that I think it's important to understand is that we have researched, for every tree that we disturb and remove, is there an opportunity to replace? And quite honestly, until we understand what's going to happen to the current Park Forest Middle School and that property, we can't necessarily answer that question. But, because on the site of the new building, there's going to need to be parking lots, there's going to need to be roadways, there's going to be some storm basin, there's going to need to be some fields, and we're looking to keep some tennis court and things. So there's not a lot of room there. And until we understand what would happen to the current building, we can't answer that question. So again, I feel like I'm a little bit repetitive, but I think it's important for historical purposes to document those conversations.
Yeah, sometimes we have people tune in at different points of the conversation. Other questions about, yeah, Peter?
Yeah, well, first, I appreciate you guys taking making every calculation available to us related to tree cutting, because, yeah, we have about a 1 to 2 ratio, about twice as many trees would be removed in option 1 as from option 2. I appreciate you saying that, sharing that with us. And looking at the maps here, so in both options, we have a surface stormwater management basin that would be up at the corner of Amblewood and Valley Vista. And reviewing the Patton Township Stormwater Ordinance, I didn't see anything that would prohibit planting of some trees in the basin itself. I know that that can be a challenge for engineering purposes and if there's a liner in it or whatnot, but I'm wondering if you guys have talked about how that basin can be planted to enhance habitat in an otherwise deforested area.
Those conversations did take place, but brief. So that's something we can certainly look at. I'm not a stormwater basin expert, but I don't think we can put, let's say, oaks in, right? It's smaller kind of brush type native plantings that we'll certainly have a deeper conversation once we kind of we're moving forward with one option or the other.
Yeah, I always wondered about like willow or river birch, and I mean, these are stream adjacent types of plants, so I've always wondered why we don't use those more, but I am not a stormwater basin expert.
Right, I mean, we have to look at shallow rooted
Stuff,
plantings.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I know some of the work, I feel like I'm having like back in the good old days kind of moment when I was on the Ferguson board and we were working on a changed stormwater ordinance and the number of conversations we had about that and some of the ways that just locally, some of the stormwater basins have been planted in Ferguson Township and managed deliberately for this purpose. So I know that there are some in the area that are functioning well and providing this, this additional feature. So.
Yeah, Aaron.
I realize it's not on this plan, but I guess I'm just curious about how the current building handles stormwater. Like, is there a basin that we can, I mean, other than the roof leaking, yeah, not buckets, but.
So there is a basin down towards Welsh Pool.
Yep.
Oh, okay. So it kind of goes downhill.
Or the Park Forest Pool, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welch is at the high school.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's
Yes.
okay. We knew what you meant.
The pool.
Yes.
Okay, so, and we can't necessarily use that as, I guess that's too far over to use as part of the project.
That plus it is not, with current regulations, it is not
Okay,
near big enough.
Got it, okay, yeah, I guess that would make sense.
Yeah, for how old the previous building was built. Might be part of why we have those soggy fields.
But, I mean, buckets are always an option for stormwater management.
Right. Anything else regarding the stormwater at Park Forest?
Okay,
All right.
so we'll use the option 2 then for our future design work. Thank you.
That seems reasonable. All right, thanks, Mike. Up next, we'll have an update on the 2025-2026 proposed final budget. Mr. Johnson would like to make a few comments before turning things over to the finance team.
Okay, so we are presenting this proposed final budget for review for this evening. The finance team has prepared this budget based upon the request for new staffing to meet needs for our district for the coming year. Although there are still items to consider in our budget process at this time, we recommend a tax increase of 4%, Act 1 index. This increase takes into account not only the short-term economic uncertainty which exists, but also looking at the long-term financial needs of the district related to inflation, increased cost of staffing, potential increase of staffing needs, a building project for the Park Forest Middle School, and the district-wide facility master plan currently in process. I will now like to turn the presentation over to Randy and Joe for further comment.
Thank you. Just wanted to talk about real briefly. We want to take tonight to review our proposed final budget. However, as you should probably remember, what we present tonight may not be completely identical to what we would ask you to approve next meeting, as well as we'll continue to make refinements and adjustments, not only based upon your input, but also our input of our review and analysis of the projections. We're still shooting for an approval at the first meeting in June for the final budget and all of the tax rates. In doing so, we want to review our projections with you. We have some updates for the current year as well. There are many components to the budget, and we're going to discuss some of these components with you, as well as at the next boarding meeting, we will have additional information as we approach the final steps in our budget season. So, Joe, you want to go ahead?
Well, thank you. I think, as we've talked about before, excuse me, that this is a year of, in many ways, transition with some of the new projects and capitals coming along lines, and then some of the information that we're trying to do with health insurance as well. And then it's also a year of uncertainty with all of the things coming out of the federal level. So going to key changes in 24-25 since the last update. There is a change in presentation for debt service and capital reserve, basically to move debt service into the capital reserve fund and out of the general fund, and eliminating the transfers as well. One point that I'd like to talk about is health insurance. I'd like to get into that a little more in depth as we're getting more and more information and very recent information. It's good news potentially, but as you've seen in the past few years, health insurance, it fluctuates because of our direct insured model very much between year to year. We've recently got some, what we think is potentially good news that we're still verifying with the actuary, and we plan to have a more definitive projections in the next few weeks. But this year, it looks like it's potentially could be better news than versus last year, which was not necessarily good news. And part of that will also play out in a later slide as I sort of explain how we're going to sort of transition from how we are handling health insurance right now to how potentially it could be handled in the future. And we think it'll bring an added level of clarity once we pull everything together. So key changes to 25 and 26 since the last update. Good news on real estate tax development. The appeals process are still very strong, but there were 4 new large properties, a couple high rises, a couple medical facilities that came online, which gave us a boost. And that will be based upon the county's letter that we received in early to mid-March regarding where they expect the assessed value properties to be next year for their billing. We've seen a significant increase in utility rates. This is not usage, but rates, whether it's natural gas, electricity, or water sewer. Inflation is hitting those industries, costs are going up. There's been additional effort for athletic security services, have put additional costs by about 50% over the last 2 years to provide the additional support at those extracurricular events. And just to show an additional safety presence, I think we've seen all around some of the issues that are happening across the state, and just to make sure that we are on top of that and paying attention to that to make sure that we provide a safe space for our spectators. And then new positions proposed for 25-26. There is a special education teacher, and I won't go through off of this, a business education teacher to meet new requirements for that have been put in place by PDE, an additional school psychologist, a student activities and athletic manager, a clerical position in the special ed department, with the goal that perhaps this position can be paid for through additional billings or savings associated with Access MA billing. An additional physical plant custodian, which will increase Radio Park and Park Forest middle schools to a full position in each building.
Radio Parks and elementary, so is it Radio Park
Elementary
and
school, sorry. Yes, sorry, it was.
That's okay, easy to do.
And then in addition, there's a substitute pay rate increase proposed effective July 1st, 2025. In the revenue comparison, you can see there is still growth. The growth is running at a little bit lower level than it had been in previous years, and some of the where some of the decreases coming in at this point is the interest rate on investments. We're projecting a drop-off next year in 25-26 with some of the trends that we're seeing recently in the interest rate environment. And this will show you a graph depicting the projected revenues by categories, and then within the local revenues, how it's broken down, with the largest components being local revenues, 80% of the effort going into the district's budget. And you can see about 3/4 of the local revenue comes from real estate taxes. In the expense comparison, you can see a growth from 205.5 million to 212.1 million, and a large portion of that growth is forecast in the salaries and health insurance line items. But again, hopefully we'll have some good news with health insurance coming forward. And as you can see, the expenditure growth, it continues to be more heavily weighted towards salaries and health insurance and basically personnel costs across the board. You can see they've increased by approximately $9 million between the 24-25 projected and the 25-26 projected at this point in time, while overall total expenditures went up by about $6.5 million. And then flows through, this is just the information for the fund balance roll forward. And then moving forward, these are the fund balance roll forward for some of the other funds, the minor capital projects funds, the debt service fund, or capital reserve fund, and I believe the debt service fund, or capital project funds are all on here with the finishing of the bond dollars. But the one I want to show you real quickly is at the bottom of page 16. And that is the internal service for Fund 60. There's been a minor change to this one. I apologize, 24-25 should not have had any activity in it. There was a calculation which I copied over and didn't realize with the deletion of it. But what is being proposed on here is the beginning committed fund balance as it would end in 24-25 will be brought into this fund. So the fund balance would be just transferred from the general fund as a committed fund balance into the internal service fund. And then you will see premium income coming into this budget on the bottom half of the page, whether it's employer, employee, or investment earnings. So the idea would be that would be the income to this fund would be the expense in the general fund. So you would be paying premiums into this internal service funds. And then the claims right now, which are being paid out of the general fund, would be paid, and those are being paid to Highmark, would be paid out of the health insurance expense down there. And then that's how it would be shown. We realize that this would need to be shown to the board on a very regular basis as a key piece of information. But instead of managing the various premiums as well as the health insurance costs, the billings from Highmark through a liability account on the general fund side, we will be able to manage it through an income statement, providing this detail in greater transparency as to what is funding it, how is it doing on a profit and loss basis on an annual basis. So the hope is by the transition to that, and this is brought to you from the GAAP perspective, generally accepted accounting principles. We're verifying what we need to do for PDE purposes before we get too far down this line to make sure we're in compliance there as well.
Can I just add? So right now, what we've seen in the last 2 years is that our healthcare costs were higher than we had budgeted last year. And so we saw a spike in those expenses last year, hitting our financial statements in the general fund. This year, they have not been increasing as much as we had thought, so they're a little bit lower. We have the typical spike and fall. And what we're looking to do is move that from our general fund into what's called an internal service fund, so that the general fund will assess a fee per every employee to generate revenue for the internal service fund in order to pay for the bills of the healthcare program. And then we can assess that fee, that rate, based upon our actual usage and adjust accordingly based upon how much revenue we need to generate in that internal service fund to cover those expenses each year. All the while, the internal service fund will also have that 3 to 6 month worth of fund balance that we had been setting aside as a committed fund balance for healthcare to help cover those spikes and falls. As we experienced that spike last year, in talking further with our auditors, both last year when we closed the books as well as this current year, this was recommended to us not only to help manage that, but also to just really focus on what we really need to focus on in the general fund and not have it create a talking point when it's not necessary. So just wanted to try to explain a little bit further.
And another way of thinking about this is prior to switching to being directly insured, we were fully insured. So our premiums were our premiums, and that's what we paid. When we became directly insured, we onboarded the risk. And it's been good for the district to onboard that risk because we've had a positive experience with it. But the risk in the general fund has not been good to have it there. This will move the risk over to the internal service fund while still in treating the general fund more as a fully insured methodology that we had had prior to moving to being directly insured.
Thanks.
Just to paraphrase, so it gives us both accountability, can you hear me? Can you hear me? So it gives us both accountability and then also flexibility. Okay, so you did a really good job because I was able to follow it and then
Good.
ask a clarifying question that made sense. So
Good,
thank you.
thanks.
Great, thanks, Ann. Yeah, Carleen?
I think,
Oh,
Tip
thanks,
had a
Debbie.
question before me.
So I just want to understand, and I'm sorry to harp on this point. So for example, maybe on page like 13, when we look at this expense comparison, and in actual slide 13, right? In actual 23, 24, we're showing a use of what we were calling before this committed fund balance for health insurance. And we're not gonna show it that way.
No.
So where does that money show, what line does that money go into in the other years?
Okay, so.
Is that possible to see on that page? That's the disconnect that I'm trying to understand. Does that make sense?
Okay, so the committed fund balance, when you see the 1.4 million down
Yes.
there, that was going into the $9.3 million. That's going on to page
Yes.
16, slide 16, where that 9.3 comes in at the bottom. I can't see my finger on there. But, so that's where that 1.4 million is doing, it's increasing the committed fund balance. What will happen is that line for health insurance will no longer show the impacts of the heavier claims from Highmark or the reduced claims from Highmark. That will just be the district's premiums going to pay into the fund associated with the insurance, the internal service fund over here. So the 19.7 that you're seeing on the page there will end up being, if we were to
What,
float it through.
19.7, where, oh, you mean like under health insurance?
Health insurance, correct.
Gotcha.
That will end up being the employer premiums coming in as revenue to Fund 60.
Okay.
And then from there, you're talking about the positive, negative experience, that would adjust the fund balance in Fund 60. Because if you look down below on slide 16 where you have the health insurance expense, those will be the costs associated with Highmark. So if we have a good claims year, the premiums will outweigh the expenses to Highmark. If we have a bad claims year, the premiums will be less than the expenses to Highmark. And the goal is to always balance it to that 3 to 6 month amount in fund balance.
That $1.4 million line item will never appear again once we make this change.
Clearly, and I was just trying to understand kind of where it went.
Yep.
Does that make
So
sense?
that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, Carleen?
Yes, going to, when you said about the significant increase in utility rates, when we're saying significant, do we have a percentage, 20, 30, 50?
I believe I saw on the water sewer, it was somewhere between over 2 years a 10 to 20% increase. I think for electricity, we were about 6.5 cents a kilowatt hour on the contract that ended and renewed last July at like 7.9 cents a kilowatt hour. Natural gas, we'll find out. I don't know if we've gotten more information since the other day, but I think they were talking potentially 30% to 40%.
Yeah, look like 30% amount.
The reason I asked that is also I was looking at the expenses and I was just wondering, I was trying to figure out myself, where would that go? And also like when the PPA kicks in, like how do we monitor that? So I was thinking,
We'll monitor it by what we pay out.
Okay.
Yep.
Where does that go in our expenses? Like supplies and equipment? I mean, where would you put that?
I believe within how they're categorized, they're in, I think, other purchase services and I think purchase property services. I think they go to, because of, I think some are 400 accounts and some are 500 accounts. They go to two different line items within, as are rolled up within here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Aaron?
So I just had a quick question. I've gotten a lot of questions and sort of concerns about the federal revenue that we bring in. One of the things I wondered about, I'm not entirely sure how it's listed here. Are the reimbursements for the meal program for free and reduced price lunch part of the federal money, or is it part of the state money?
Mostly federal. There is a portion that is also state.
Okay, and is that in the budget? Like which of the?
This is a general fund budget, that's
Oh,
not in the
okay.
general fund.
That would
That's
be
the
in food service.
That's a separate thing. Okay, all right, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, breakfast is from the state. And I think the state's also providing the differential between free and reduced lunch. So that it comes out, it functions for us as a free lunch no matter what, because the state makes up that difference. I have a couple comments, but are there any other questions? So aside from the potential financial uncertainty that you mentioned, and I know you quickly went through those positions, and I understand from your perspective that's not as important, but I think for our community, I'd really like to highlight a couple things about those positions. One being that Mr. Johnson already shared with us, there's a significant increase in need for staffing in special ed. So while we're only adding one position to the budget, we are actually shifting other positions internally to meet that need. So there is more growth in the need for special education teachers than what we're adding to the budget. And I want to point out that that's a federally mandated requirement. We have ratios we have to meet, and with our increasing students who need those higher ratios, that drives up our need for personnel, which drives up our costs. That's federally required through IDEA, which has never been even partially funded by the federal government. Nor has special education increased significantly from the state in the past several years. So I want that to be in our community's radar to understand that that's a big driver for us this year in terms of moving forward. You also mentioned the financial literacy course. That's a state mandated requirement. So we have to teach that to all our students before they graduate. There's 2,400 students at the high school. So each and every one of them have to take at some point in time that course. So there's several sections that we have to staff that drives that position. And then there was one other thing. The school psychologist, again, tied to mandates. We are required by federal government to perform evaluations when a parent requests them. And we've been farming out a little bit of our work through contracting. And we've decided to take on another position in order to not have to do that. So we will have a little bit of a trade-off in saving those funds and no longer contracting out for some of those services. But again, gifted education services, as well as special education evaluations, all have to be performed by a certified school psychologist, and they must be done in a timely manner. There's about 68 days, I believe, school days, that it has to be completed within. So we cannot have inadequate staffing in that realm. So I just wanted to highlight some of those functional things about these positions and why we're adding them for the community.
Can I add one more thing about
Absolutely.
your school psychologist? Not only is it mandated for our district students, but it's also mandated that our district provide those to our private and charter school students as well.
That's correct, yes. We're required to make that available.
And we have those same timeframes,
Yep.
time commitments for those students as well.
Yeah. And I've had some kids go through those. I know from the other side, it's important to those families that they're done timely,
Absolutely.
and we try really hard to
But
make
while
sure
we're
we
talking
do.
about mandates,
Absolutely. Yep. Any other comments on the proposed final budget? Okay.
so actually several of the items that were discussed tonight, we're still looking for hopefully some additional reductions in the total budget to offset some of these increased costs. I still don't believe that with the Park Forest project on deck, with the district-wide master plan that we're looking to develop, the uncertainty in interest rates, not only on the investment side, but also on the borrowing side, that we'll be looking at a reduction lower than the Act 1 index of 4% with all of those unknowns. So I just want to throw that out there. In my 20-year career, that hasn't happened very often. So normally we try to get it as low as possible, but at this point, I think that it's very important that we set the stage. It's not just for the next year's budget, which is also operating at a deficit, I will say, but it's also for building the capacity in tax revenue and revenue in general for the district for what's upcoming. I will add one final comment about the Mount Nittany Elementary and Park Forest project. Both of those projects, we are working very closely with our financial advisor to bring a proposal to you about financing for those projects, and that could look in a multitude of ways. We're still not sure how that will look. It's a risk analysis of, do we expect interest rates to be higher or lower than they are right now? What are the different types of bank loans or bond offerings that are available? So we're muddling through all of those decisions and possibilities. The more times that we borrow money, there's more sunk costs or one-time costs that we have to pay as well. So we are trying to evaluate all of those items, and we will hopefully have a proposal, if not the next meeting, in 2 meetings for you.
Yeah. And larger context is potential pending teacher shortages. So we've structured our recent bargaining unit negotiations in such a way to try and maintain ourselves as being competitive in that shrinking pool of candidates. Yeah.
Well, and I don't necessarily want to pile on the uncertainty train, but the impact of tariffs on any number of construction materials, the mechanical systems, the electrical systems, et cetera, are, we could forecast some of those now. There are systems that go across the border in some cases a couple of times, and who knows what that will do, because each trip across the border does something to the cost of a good. So there could be systems in the buildings that are coming where the increase in price is going to have a broader impact, and those are unpredictable right now. And so I feel so glad to be on a board that takes our facilities so seriously and tries to look out into the future the best that we can. Thank you guys so much. And we're going to be continuing to face that uncertainty. So,
yeah, I'd add not only the tariffs impact on specific goods, I'm very concerned about supply chain issues and the fact that there are, what I've heard people talk about is there are many businesses that are scrambling to then change perhaps where they're manufacturing different goods because of the tariffs. And so in the process of them scrambling to potentially change who's manufacturing which part of their good, there could be delays while they make those changes or ramp up or prepare. And we know from COVID, the impact of those kinds of things when we have a building project can really stall. Many of you are very new, but after the 5 previous projects, I can tell you that when one critical good is missing, you can really have a domino effect on slowing a project. And anytime you slow a construction project, the costs continue to escalate while that's ongoing. So there are a lot of factors that we have to consider that are really, really concerning moving forward that we may need to be prepared for.
And we've said nothing about the potential income impacts from a potential recession on. I know I'm in doomland here, but I think it's I think that we ought to say it at the table. That people's 401ks, as one representative said, are becoming 201ks, and what that does to people's retirement, what that does to people's incomes in the near term, employment. I think that it's better for us to just say the scary things at the table, recognizing that we might have to deal with them and deal with them as they come.
Yeah, and they're not synergistic in a positive way. So
Not at all.
When we have our community struggling, and then we're struggling and asking for more tax dollars because we're struggling, that doesn't help our community either. So It would be really wonderful if we had more assistance from higher up as opposed to leaving everything at local government.
Can I just kind of tailing off of that, just in sort of the more immediate context, I know that we approved bids for Mount Nittany Elementary School, but I think that price of the commodities that go into building have escalated so quickly, is there any risk associated with the possibility of that cost going up?
There are contracts for deliverables included in that.
Okay,
The only risk would be if we make any changes.
right.
If there are delays beyond which the contractor
Right.
doesn't have control.
Okay.
And if there's any items that weren't in the contract, furniture as an example, we did not bid the furniture yet. So that could be potentially, at risk. But for the most part, we have the majority of the costs locked
In
in.
terms of like the steel beams?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Correct.
my biggest concern is like,
Yes.
Steel, aluminum,
It's-
copper, wood.
Sorry, sometimes we have change orders that impact rerouting, say,
Yeah.
a system, and then we sometimes can get into bigger costs. But I agree with Randy, that for the most part, we should be in fairly good shape.
And the one other question unrelated to that, these proposed substitute pay rates, is that equivalent to surrounding districts? Is it higher, is it lower?
For the most part, it's matching, maybe
Matching.
a little bit higher in some cases.
Okay.
But we are not the highest in any of those categories at this point in time.
Okay, all right, so we're trying to stay competitive then.
We're trying to stay competitive, yes.
Yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, I have some historical context for that, so. Did you want to add anything, Ann? All right, I think we've covered
Okay.
all the economic gamut. Appreciate very much how thorough you guys have been. Let me figure out where I am. Okay, so at this point, that concludes committee of the whole portion of the meeting. We now have additional time for public comment. Is there anyone here online, let's start there, that wants to make a public comment? Okay, anybody in person for additional public comment? Okay, then we'll move on to the consent agenda. This includes several items we'll address in a single motion for approval. We'll go through each category stepwise. Any changes or corrections to the minutes? All right. Finance and personnel, we've got some grants, renewal of the apartment lease for Lifelink, repair of a grand piano, and some supplies for CTC. Anything needing to be changed? Okay. Instructional programs, we have 2 foreign exchange students and some trip requests. Any corrections or problems there? Yeah, Peter?
No, I just have a comment about exchange student number 2. Exchange student, not the individual per se, but they are coming from the Netherlands. And the Netherlands has issued a travel warning for its citizens for individuals coming to the United States.
Yeah, I guess that's a personal decision that student will need to make. Thanks for pointing that out. Any other issues in that section? Okay, physical plant, we have some regular contracts and a change order. Any questions? Okay, and lastly, we have policies. We have the club sports policy, which we discussed previously. I had requested some minor caveats changes, or specificity changes, which I appreciate were added and seem much clearer now. Anything else people had regarding that? All right. Hearing none, I'd like to call for a motion to approve consent agenda items 9 through 13 as presented.
Miller, so moved.
Oh, Pete Buck, second.
All right, thank you. That was really much prompter than in the past. I like it. Any additional questions or discussion? Any public comment on this, on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the consent agenda is passed. Next, we have action items. We'll start with agenda item 14A is a motion to approve CrowdStrike cybersecurity services as shown in attachment 14A. Do I have a motion?
Anderson, so moved.
Miller, second.
Excellent. Questions or discussions on this item? This is a substantial contract, but for a substantial period of time as well.
Question.
And it's an elemental piece. Yeah, Carly?
Is it an annual contract versus a 7-year contract? Is that the only extremes that we have?
Randy's going to come in. Yep.
I know they said it's not so much of a cost saving to get a 7-year contract. It was listed there, but we don't want the price to increase, so it might be a benefit. But I'm also worried that there may be better you know, these, these CrowdStrike, something better that could come down before 7 years. And so I was just wondering, do we have to have 7 years? Could we have 5 year or 3 year?
Justin, are you online to answer that question more appropriately than I?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So they do offer different term lengths. So in the past we have done a 3 year. The reason that we went with a 7 year for this contract was primarily just to lock in the price, because with the consortium it is definitely lower than what we have seen historically. And even what I'm seeing from other vendors with some raises in pricing for these types of services. We did take into consideration as far as could there be another vendor that could come along and we would want to make a change. Where we're at with that right now is this and one of the other ones we evaluated are currently the industry leaders. And what we have seen, that's not going to change very rapidly or rapidly enough that we would want to make a switch before this 7 year period. It could be that at the end of the 7 years we would reevaluate, but we didn't go longer than 7 years for that reason, so that we were giving ourselves that opportunity at the end of this contract.
Okay, I figured that much. That's probably why you did go with it. But I'm just afraid that a lot of times you see a lot of these antivirus protection, and I just don't want, 5 years down the road, we think that there's a better one. That's just my concern.
Justin, do you maybe want to share a little bit more about what they're providing? Because I think it's a little more complex than maybe what we're used to in terms of like anti-spyware on our computers. Can you maybe just give a brief description?
Yep. No. So they're providing a lot more than just antivirus. So they're actually providing like a security operations center as a service, which will include things like account security provisioning, identity protection, exposure management, antivirus. They do some external scanning and training for us as well. So it's almost a complete security package rather than just an antivirus package. So that's where, again, the length of the term, I do agree that was a concern, and I know Randy also brought that to my attention, and that's we didn't go with a 10-year or a longer term, so that we had that opportunity at the end of 7 years to reevaluate this. But with the amount of services they're offering, it would be unlikely that a competitor would come to that level in that time frame. It would be more likely it would take longer, more closer to like 7 or 10 year period for someone to get to where the services they're currently providing at that level.
So
or else we'd have to go to multiple vendors to cobble together.
Correct. Yep.
Right, and that's what I was going to say, is this is one vendor providing these services, and just a few short years ago, we had multiple vendors providing the different level of services, so.
And we've had experience with student information systems that when we have multiple vendors doing different systems, we have sometimes difficulties getting them to cooperate and play nicely together.
So we are making annual payments. We won't be prepaying, but it will be for a term of 7 years.
We're locked in it, basically.
Correct.
Yeah, I am familiar with CrowdStrike because my kids are computer people, but I do appreciate that a lot of thought was put into this.
Absolutely. Yeah, Justin and I had to have lots of back and forth.
Is there, if I could ask, is there a cost associated with changing vendors, not getting out of the contract, but just saying if we went with a shorter term and then changed vendors, is there like a time or resources cost associated with changing?
Yes, there would be. So there would be soft costs as far as we would need to basically touch every piece of equipment that has that software installed on it, as well as there may be some hardware changes to make our existing infrastructure compatible if we were to switch vendors.
Plus probably some training. And so I have to agree. I do think that the 7 year term makes sense for that kind of stability.
Yeah, it's tricky. I appreciate you guys trying to find a sweet spot. Anything else? Okay. Any public comment on this item? All right, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is passed. Agenda item 14B is a motion to approve the Eastern University Student Teacher Experience Agreement. This is shown in attachment 14B. Do I have a motion?
Anderson moved.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this item? It's a fairly routine agreement. Okay, any public comment? All right, board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that item is passed as well. Agenda item 14C is a motion to approve natural gas rates for 2025, 2026, shown in attachment 14C.
Miller so moved.
Anderson second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. As noted in the memo, this is subject to possible change at the time of signing of the contract, but as the best we know, these are the rates we have available in front of us. Are there any questions for the finance team about this? Okay.
Actually, I did
sorry.
wonder, since we mentioned utilities when talking about the budget, this doesn't represent a 30% increase, or it does?
It's, yeah, I thought was what I read.
okay.
Mhm. Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I look forward to the days when the facilities of the State College Area School District no longer use natural gas. That's all.
Okay. All right. Any public comment on this item? All right, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That item is passed. Agenda item 14D is a motion to approve the low bidder for the security window film installation. This is shown in attachment 14D.
Buck, so moved.
Anderson second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. This is some security film, and we're covering this with PCCD grant money.
So I wanted to ask, I know that they're from South Carolina. Is that an issue in terms of like, do they just ship the film to us? Or like if something, the fact that they're not in proximity really to Pennsylvania, is that an issue? I was actually searching if it related to any bird strike thing, and it was like not so, but then in the process of looking for that, I found out they were from South Carolina. So is that an issue?
We don't feel it is. They will install it too. So they'll send a crew up with materials and stay.
Great. Okay.
Yes, Caroline?
Actually, I looked that up too. They do have some mild thing up for birds. They do have some protection.
Oh.
Not a lot. They recommend you buy the specific one for the birds, but they do have some kind of mitigating.
Better than none.
Exactly.
All right.
Oh, see,
I like
didn't
that.
find that. Good for you.
That's good, right, Mike?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Peter?
Yeah, this is a comment more than a question. You know, during in the last couple years, I've had conversations with a number of parents about school safety, and this kind of thing was something that came up in quite a few conversations. You know, parents being worried about things like sightlines into schools because of the epidemic of school shootings that we have in this country, and I'm really glad that this is on here. It's also something that people across whatever political viewpoint really agree on is about school safety in this regard. And so I just want to, you know, highlight something that has a ton of agreement on it because we all look out for our kids' safety.
Yep. That's true.
Just for clarification, it says the film is only to be installed on the main entrances and adjoining windows, so it's not going on the classroom windows.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, we for the grant amount, we prioritized the main entrances and vestibules.
Are we considering putting it on classroom windows in the future?
We are. We're
Okay,
looking at
and would that
kind of
reduce the amount of natural light that the kids are getting? I don't know how that works.
maybe a little. It's
Okay.
too early to tell.
All right.
Yeah, we'll see how they work in the initial. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, any public comment on this item? Thanks, Mike. All right, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that item is passed as well. That concludes our agenda for this evening. Looking ahead to future meetings, we have April 15th. Policy Development Committee, that's at 1:30 here in Panorama Village Boardroom. April 21st, we'll have a regular board meeting at 7 p.m. here in Panorama Village Boardroom. I would now like to adjourn the meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. Have a good evening, everyone.
It's so funny you look for the bird string too.